Nobody talks about how it actually happens. It's not dramatic. There's no falling out, no betrayal, no moment you can point to and say, that's when things changed. It's slower than that. One day you realize you haven't made a real plan with anyone in 3 months. You have people you follow online, people you occasionally like posts from, people you'd call acquaintances if someone pressed you for a word. But friends? People who actually know what's going on inside your life right now?
You pause longer than you expected on that question, and the pause itself tells you something. Gen Z is the most socially connected generation in history by every measurable metric. More platforms, more followers, more daily interactions than any human beings have ever had access to before. And somehow, statistically, the loneliest. Not lonely in the way previous generations understood it. The widow in the quiet house, the man who moved to a new city and never found his footing. Lonely in a completely new way, surrounded by signal, starved of substance. Here's the specific thing that nobody's naming correctly. Previous generations built friendships almost by accident. Geography did the work. You grew up on the same street, got assigned to the same classroom, ended up at the same job. Proximity created the conditions, time did the rest. Gen Z doesn't have that architecture anymore. The street became a feed, the classroom became a group chat, the job became remote, freelance, digital, something you do alone in a room with your laptop and a playlist. All the invisible scaffolding that used to accidentally build friendships just quietly collapsed.
And nothing replaced it. So now forming a genuine friendship requires something it never used to require: deliberate, uncomfortable, repeated vulnerability with no guarantee of return. And a generation psychologically conditioned for instant feedback, optimized responses, and frictionless interaction is spectacularly ill-equipped for that. But there's a deeper wound underneath the structural one. Gen Z grew up watching friendship performed online. Perfectly edited group photos, laughing videos that looked effortless, people surrounded by others who always seemed to know exactly what to say, exactly how to be, exactly where to belong.
And somewhere in the comparison, quiet, relentless, cumulative, a belief formed. Everyone else figured this out. Something is wrong with me. That belief is more destructive than the loneliness itself, because it transforms a structural problem into a personal flaw. It makes a generation of people who are all quietly experiencing the same thing each feel uniquely, privately broken by it. The cruel irony being, if they could actually talk to each other about it, they'd discover they're all sitting in the same room, just alone in it. There's a concept in psychology called relationship maintenance behavior, the small, consistent, unremarkable acts that keep a friendship alive. Checking in without a reason, showing up when nothing's happening, sitting in comfortable silence with someone and calling that enough. These behaviors feel almost counterintuitive to a generation trained on event-based socializing. You hang out when there's a plan, you talk when there's something to say, you reach out when you have a reason. But real friendship doesn't run on reasons. It runs on presence. Repeated, low-stakes, unglamorous presence. And presence is the one thing an algorithm can't simulate, no matter how sophisticated the notification gets. A text that says, "thinking of you," hits differently than a like. But the like is easier, and easier always wins in an overstimulated nervous system. So the maintenance quietly stops. The friendship doesn't end. It just slowly drops below the threshold of aliveness. Here's what makes this generation specifically vulnerable in a way others weren't. They never fully learned the awkward phase of friendship.
Every previous generation had to survive the uncomfortable, inefficient, often embarrassing process of getting to know someone in real time. The silences that lasted too long, the jokes that didn't land, the slow negotiation of two personalities finding their frequency. That friction wasn't a bug, it was the process. It's how trust got built, not through perfectly curated self-presentation, but through surviving imperfect moments together. Gen Z largely skipped that.
Online, you can present your most interesting self. You can edit before you send. You can ghost without confrontation, exit without explanation, rebrand without anyone who knew the previous version. The whole apparatus of modern social life is designed to eliminate friction. But it eliminated the thing friction was secretly building. So what actually remains? For a lot of Gen Z men specifically, what remains is a kind of surface-level social fluency masking a deep relational hunger. They can talk to anyone. They struggle to connect with anyone. They know how to perform friendliness. They've forgotten how to offer friendship. And late at night, when the feed goes quiet and the playlist ends and there's nothing left to consume, that hunger surfaces in a way that's hard to explain and harder to admit. Because admitting it means confronting the possibility that the connection they've been performing all along was never real. And that's a particular kind of grief. Not the grief of losing something, the grief of realizing you might never have had it. But here's the quiet truth underneath all of it. The hunger itself is proof of something important. You don't ache for something your nature doesn't require. The fact that it hurts, the friendlessness, the invisible life, the unlived moments, means the wiring for connection is still completely intact. It was never broken. It was just never given the right conditions. And conditions can change. Not through an app, not through a challenge, not through forcing yourself into rooms that don't fit. Through one honest conversation with one person who makes the silence feel less heavy. That's how it always started. That's how it still starts.